interview goes, it is off of, the only thing I could find was the name of it is Making Die Another Day. I do not know the date for it. It seems to be right after the making of it. It's 2002, 2003, my assumption. The interviewer asks, what about the rumor of a Sean Connery cameo? And this is the reason I mentioned The Rock. And here's why I think The Rock is not a James Bond cameo. Lee's response is, I was very involved in not the rumor, but I wanted a Sean Connery cameo. Michael and Barbara, with some well-reasoned thought behind it, it was one of the few ideas that was rejected. Interviewer says, what was the idea? Lee Tamahori says, my idea was basically that there have been several Bonds. It's just a suffix and a code name. Even James Bond is not the guy's name. That's the way I've always been able to view these things, from when Connery left and Lazenby and Moore took over, right up to Brosnan. How could this guy be so young still? Of course, to me, it is just a prefix and a code name. That means either Connery died or retired, Moore died or retired, and soon following that allows you to have possibly two James Bonds in a movie. What happened to the others? Were they retired from active service, or were they killed? That's where I come from. First of all, in response to those, I don't think Lee is I don't think he's knowledgeable to the previous Bond films, and it kind of shows in below the following quotes. You'll see what I mean by that. Regardless, Barbara and Michael's rejection of that idea shows that it's not what they intended for their Bond character. Moving on, the interviewer asks, awesome idea, but I have to bring up a fanboy point. Why are the other James Bonds mourning the same dead wife? And Lee says, well, they don't. And this is evidence that he kind of doesn't know James Bond's history. And then the interviewer asks, or he actually states, he doesn't ask, he says, Moore visits her grave in For Your Eyes Only. And Lee says, oh, he does he? I didn't know that. Again, if he doesn't know that Moore even visited Tracy's grave, how can he be any sort of an authority on whether or not James Bond is a code name or not? Especially because Barbara and Michael rejected that idea. The interviewer says, or asks, what would your answer have been had I not brought that up? And Lee's like, I was not aware that he visited it. So, I mean, come on. Those statements alone, you can't take him seriously when it comes to the character and understanding the past. The next thing I want to talk about is, and this is kind of a side trail, is I want to discuss, well, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to break this flow here. The next thing is the Aston Martin. Some people give argument, well, he gets an Aston Martin here. And I'm like, yeah, but this Aston Martin he won at a poker game against one of the main bad guys. Whereas the Aston Martin in Goldfinger is an issued Aston Martin from MI6. So that just, I mean, you can even consider them not even the same car. Okay, now, since I've kind of debunked all those, the biggest thing that people say, and this is their people's big red flag, and I understand, if the knowledge of this subject, if they didn't know this, and their big argument is Judi Dench. They say, how can you have Judi Dench be in Casino Royale, die in Skyfall, and then come back later? Because I divide Brosnan and Craig, and I have the other M's in between them. And they say, you just can't do that. But I say, yes I can, and I'll tell you why. Is because there's 4 M's total. There's 2 male M's. And there's 2 female M's. You might be saying to yourself, whoa, what on earth are you talking about? Well, let me run this down for you. Okay. There's 2 female M's. Craig's M. Her name is Olivia Mansfield. And the way I found this out is that I look at things when I watch these movies. I look at all the paperwork and stuff. So I'll zoom in and I'll read all the paperwork, or just little things that catch my eye. And I actually was online researching this a while ago, like a few years ago, like before I did this, I want to say sometime between Casino Royale and Skyfall, I discovered this theory, or it's not a theory, but it's actually what's going on. But then after Skyfall came out, I was just researching online, and I discovered that the bulldog at the end of Skyfall actually has the name of Olivia Mansfield on it. And I'm like, so Craig's M is Olivia Mansfield. Craig's Judi Dench, that M is Olivia Mansfield. The other female M is called Barbara Maudsley. And notice how they both have M at the end of their name. And she's Brosnan's M. And she's actually the M in the Ray Benson novels, which are the Brosnan novels. And her name's brought up in those. I don't know exactly which novels her name comes up in. I haven't looked at that, and I can't remember. I think it might be Tomorrow Never Dies, but I'm not positive about that. Anyway, so so basically, Craig's M is Olivia Mansfield. Brosnan's M is Barbara Maudsley. And they both are different, not just that, but because their personalities are different. And there's things about them that are different. For example, Craig's M is more motherly, and she has the bulldog. Brosnan's M, pardon my French, she's a bitch. She hates Bond, and it's possibly because she used to be a Bond girl. Plus, she doesn't have a bulldog anywhere. Also, her predecessor's liquor, remember, it's brandy. Whose liquor was brandy? It was Miles. It was Bernard Lee's M. So we have this situation here where Bernard Lee's M is the one that came before Brosnan's M. Bernard Lee's M can't come before Craig's M if he comes before Brosnan's M. Plus, I gave that example of the 1997 thing where Silva says or I don't know if it's Silva, but anyway, the knowledge was brought up, the information was brought up that M was in 1997 a charge of the China unit division, and you can't have that if you have only one M, because in 1997, if you're in and you're going with the dates are the same, which I don't go by, but most people who hold that theory of one M, female M, they do. Barbara Maudsley was M in 1997 for Tomorrow Never Dies. So there's two female M's. The other thing is there's only two male M's. And you're probably wondering what I mean by that, because you're like, isn't there Bernard Lee, Robert Brown, and Gareth Mallory? And my theory says that there's the Bernard Lee M and the Robert Brown M are the same. And you might be shaking your head at that, like, how on earth are you coming up with that? Well, I'll prove it to you. Some people think that Admiral Hargreaves out of, what was it? From The Spy Who Loved Me. A lot of people think that's M, but he's not. And I can prove it with one simple thing. M's last name always begins with an M. Admiral Hargreaves is an H. You got Miles Meservey. Robert Brown's M is never named. You got Olivia Mansfield. You got Barbara Maudsley. And you got Gareth Mallory, Ralph Fiennes, M. So all those have M for the last name, but Admiral Hargreaves doesn't. Plus, Admiral Hargreaves' rank is higher than Bernard Lee's M and Robert Brown's M. And he's in charge of a naval fleet, one of the naval fleets, the British naval fleets. So, with that said, another thing that solidifies Lee and Brown's M is the same is they actually have the same admiral rank. And you can see this in Lee's M and You Only Live Twice, and then Brown's M in The Living Daylights. They have the exact same admiral rank. I researched it, once I'm able to get the software to do pictures, I'll put those stills up and demonstrate to you that they are. I went and researched it all. The other thing is that Brown's name, like I said before, all these others, you can find their names. But Brown was never introduced as a new M or anything like that. His name was never brought up. And we see the break from Lee's M to Brown's M in For Your Eyes Only. So For Your Eyes Only has no M in it. They say he's on leave. And then the very next film is Robert Brown's first M position, which is Octopussy. And he's from Octopussy to License to Kill. Yeah. So, with all that said, is we have the four M's, two females, two males, and Olivia Mansfield is Craig's, Barbara Maudsley's is Brosnan's. That's one of the big proofs that Daniel Craig's Bond is an origin piece or prequel.
Another differentiating factor is between the two female M's is that Brosnan's M is never called Mom at all in the series.